I have the contact form created, and the only way to access it is to click down here at the bottom. I also have some links within the pages themselves that will have a link to the contact page. So I want to show you how I'm about to do this form. Now I could put the email form in the markdown file, but I don't want to do that because I tried my best to avoid having HTML in the markdown file. I've done this here, but when it comes to an entire form, that is a lot of content to have in there. So what I'm going to do is actually kind of copy some existing code that I already have. And so on my website, what I did was, normally you cannot submit with a static website, submit data. So and that's kind of a bigger problem because you have to have some kind of server side processor that will have the ability to be able to handle the data that is being passed to it. So what I have done was, on my website, I created a PHP file, and this is it. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy it as is and put it in over here. So again, I talked about in an earlier video about reusing code that you've already written. Nothing is wrong with that. Some people frown upon it, but I enjoy it because, hey, it saves me time. Like literally, I am not having to write this over again. And Visual Studio Code is trying to be intelligent right there with all of that, but I have no need to try to fill all of that out. All right. So what I've done is I've actually copied this code, and what it does is you're basically checking to see if a value is set. And if it is set, you're going to take all the content that is in that form. So here we go. So it's a post array, and you will literally split that array out into the message body of the email, and then you will add the date time to that email, as well as the service type, which I'm gonna have to change to customize to this form with the current time, and then the headers, which is the from address. And then I have a help desk email, which is a variable that is being sourced from the environment variables, which I will show you how to do that here shortly. I do not put my environment variables in the version control. It's just a file that sits on the server in production, and then a different file that sits in development. So it's kind of like I treat it like a configuration file, and that way it's not ever committed to the code base. That way I'm not sending emails when I'm trying to test my code. I'm not sending those emails from my development environment to actual email addresses. That would be bad. So by making this environment file, that works there. So basically you got the help desk email, which I have an email dedicated to a dedicated email address in production for my particular website. On this one, it will be a email that is dedicated to the organization, kind of a generic email, and then that email has forwarding built into it so that you send it to one address, and then that one address forwards it to, I think it's like 4 or 5 different of the executive officers of the chapter. So pretty much going to level that setup. And if the mail was successful, then you redirect to what is a submission page. If not, then you do a unexpected error and fail out. And then if somebody tries to come to this page directly, then it redirects back to the home page by default. That being said, all right, so I have my submit.php. And so what I'm going to do is to add a condition in here that will check to see if we are on the contact page. So if page.url is equal to contact, I believe that's how that's set up with the there. And then I also want to do a else. And then, so if we're not on the contact page, show the page content. If we are on the contact page, show this particular form that I am about to code out format. All right, there we go. So that being said, you want to have some information in here. Let's see. You want to have the form in here so that it shows only on that page. Okay, so do form, and we're going to have the method of post, and the action will post to the submit PHP page that we just created, and we're going to close that form out. Cool. Now, I recommend having Recaptcha on your forms. I'm not going to cover how to do that, or I may come at a later point and cover how to do that. But Recaptcha, basically, you go into Google, you do a search for Google Recaptcha, and they give you a key and token and so forth, and then you copy the copy what they give you to paste it on your page, and that verifies it. Somehow magically hooks, I think, with the use of JavaScript, it will hook into your form. And so basically, if the Recaptcha is not completed, then your form is not allowed to be submitted. So that's a helpful way to prevent from getting spam. All right, so pretty much I'm going to replicate what is already here on the current form that we use on the website. And so go ahead and start out trying to see. Let me look at the source for this particular page. Curious on how this was set up. Now, mind you, this is a Drupal form, and so the Drupal way of doing things may not be the most efficient way of doing things, but it is here nonetheless. Okay, so they have a form ID with the method of post, and the form posts back to itself, and then it looks like each element or each field on the form is contained within a div, and they have a label as well as a input for each of those items. So that is very doable here. So we'll do a label, and we'll do a label for, and the we'll call it requester name. I try not to use keywords in my labeling or attributes, if you will, of the page, so that's where that comes from. All right, and so we'll call it name, and the next one we'll do an input of type text, and want to have it with a placeholder that says enter your name. There we go, and this field is going to be required. And I know some people, they just like to do the single attribute, so they'll type required like that. Personally, I hate this because when you look at it, if you're just scanning and looking at the attributes, it looks like this particular attribute does not have a value associated. So what I usually do is required equals required. And I know that's like, what? But that is valid HTML, believe it or not. So when there is a attribute that really doesn't have a value, usually the attribute is also the same thing as that value. So required equals required, and I think there's a min length. So instead of just people just typing 2 or 3 letters, for the sake of this, you want to try to get them to type their full first and last name in here. So I'm gonna set the min length to 4, and so that way if they try to type it in and it doesn't, it should not pass for that reason. All right, so I also wanted to include the form control on this particular form, and the reason being is because the form control provides some CSS styling that is built into Bootstrap, and so I want to be able to leverage that. I also need to set a name in here, and I probably need to wrap this on the, well, it'll probably wrap itself. So set the name to requester name on this, and I mean, you could just set this name, set the label for equal to name, and then name equals name, but that, in my opinion, looks rather weird. So I tried to avoid those type of setups. I know some people, they don't mind it, nor do they care. They're more concerned with if it works, and I shouldn't be concerned with what it actually says, but you really should be concerned with what it actually says. All right, so the next one is the email field. We're going to change this to email address. Likewise, email address. And I don't know what I just did there. Email address, the type is email. And yes, that is a valid type. Enter your email address. That field is required. And a min length, let's see, is really a 1, 2. So even if you had A at B dot C, A at B dot C. So there's at least 5 characters. So we're going to set that to 5. That way the form won't just be submitted. It'll probably be a pain for some people that just trying to get through this form really quickly, but we're really trying to reduce the amount of spam submissions that are being submitted. So that's how you do that. You set the min length. All right, so phone call is what I'm gonna call this instead of phone number, because some spam bots can figure out these things. So, actually, we'll have a little bit of fun here. So I'm gonna name this field call Tyrone, and the label is actually going to be phone number, and we'll go call Tyrone. Cool. Type equals phone. I think there's a type. Is there a type of telephone? So let's see. Input field types phone number. All right, so for phone number, you have a telephone type, and hey, well, why not just go ahead and copy this piece of snippet here? There we go. All right, so paste, use that pattern, and that pattern is a regular expression. Depending on where you're at, that may or may not work. So do a placeholder and do it 555 555 5555. All right. We'll set this to required, and then length is let's see, that is 10-digit phone number with 2 extra characters, so a min length of 12, and close that out in that div. So div class form control, and we have another, which I'll go ahead and copy, paste, save form control. And if you come back to here, we have subjects. I don't really think I mean, a short summary may be helpful, but I think I'm gonna go ahead and inject my own summary here in the form processor. So I'm actually going to do this last one as message, comment, or question, not request. And we'll do this as message. And actually probably want to do this as I believe that is a text area, not a input. Yes, it is. All right, so we're going to cancel that. I mean, not cancel, comment that for the moment. So text area, and name is message. And let's see what we have. So we have 5 rows and 60 columns, and the placeholder is message with the name and required. Okay. All right, so we'll do required is equal to required. Nope, not requester, required. There we go. All right, name, rows is 5, columns, we'll stick with, well, we're not gonna specify the columns. We'll see how that plays out without that piece of information being present. And let's see, placeholder, enter your message text. All right, so if we come back and refresh the page, we do not have the page body, and it's probably because of this URL. All right, so there we go. All right, so we have our page body. It looks weird because, well, it is weird nonetheless. All right, need to see where things may be going a little funky with this. So we have a div that's inside of a container. We have a form, and that form has a form control. Maybe that form control is the problem because, hey, my message. Okay, that's there. All right, so let's take these divs out. Matter of fact, let me start at the top and work my way back down to see if that will make a difference in the presentation of it. Okay, so that works. And I was going off of what existed previously, but probably should not have. div. Okay. All right. So that being said, now I'm going to use paragraph tags instead. That way I don't have to do line breaks after each one, and they should automatically break. Yes, there we go. All right, so that's a closing. Okay, there we go. That there, that there, that there, and that there. All right, save. All right, and so now to get our labels above, do line breaks on each one. You could put your label on the line by itself, to be honest. And so instead of this, do that, and then do that. Whoops, there we go, save. Now how does that look? So that looks pretty well. And if I put the class form control on here, it should do some styling here. Yeah, so it stretches it out the entire width of the screen, which is what I want. All right, so to do the same for the other elements, so I'm gonna have to, oops, copy, yeah, there we go. And go ahead and move this up, paste. And while we're at it, remove that other code that is no longer needed. So dot, there. All right, save. So now, the next part is to, actually, I didn't do that for the labels like I should have. So we'll come back here and drop that in behind each of the labels. And then we'll save and then come back and put the label, the class of form control on each of the labels. Copy, paste. Oh, you put that in there, paste. Do a format right quick because that's a little iffy looking. All right, and now we have our labels accordingly. So if we come back again to our labels, I want to make sure that people know that they are required. So there's a label attribute called required, or is required. Maybe it is required. Okay, that's not there. I may have to come in and define that. We also want to do font weights bold on this. All right, so that is bolded, and that's what we want. And so come over to the CSS, nsbe-mp.css. There we go. All right, and we're going to go down here at the bottom, do a dot required, and want to, is it after something? Let me see how I did it in here, because there is a way that you can have your page, there's a way that you can have the CSS to add characters to the beginning or the ending of an element. And I'm not sure if I know I've done it on other sites, but I'm not sure if I've done it on this one. Yep, here we go. So label required, and literally I can just copy this and paste that in, required after, and label dot required. And I want to use the, we'll go with the nsbe red on this one, since that is a brighter red color. So if we come back to the page, dot required, so required is a class, and that class is on that label. It should accept, oh, it doesn't accept that because I need to minify the file. And there we go. All right. And so my minified file is being referenced in my HTML here. So that's why that did not work. All right. The next thing, these attributes look a little bit small compared to what they probably should be on the page. And also kind of look a little bit spaced out in my opinion. So let me do this with a line break instead. And that's a little bit closer. And then I think I'm gonna make this a little bit bigger. So we can just take out each of these paragraphs and replace them with line breaks. And sometimes you'll have to do, I know you're thinking, well, you just typed that code in, now you're taking it back out. Yes, because sometimes when you're designing things, you run, you type it initially, and then when you actually look at it, once you've implemented, you're like, that doesn't look right. It needs to be fixed. And so that's essentially what has happened in this case for me is I didn't like the way it looked, so I went back and redid it. Being very proficient with the keyboard and the short keys, or excuse me, being proficient with the keyboard and the shortcuts on the keyboard for the application that you are using helps. I use Visual Studio Code for my personal development, but I also use Visual Studio in my day-to-day work. And so sometimes that has a tendency because I'll type the wrong shortcut in and get either no action or get an unexpected action. And that's always interesting to have to deal with after the fact. All right, the last thing I need is a input button of type submit with name, submit, and value of submit that is proper cased and saved. And then also need to add the class of btn and need the btn. There's another btn, I'm not sure what it is. Hold on. All right, so I got an input. Let's go to the CSS and look for the btn classes. So we got an a btn, got a btn footer, you got a regular btn for the links. All right, so whoops, and that's associated with that. All right, so coming back, so let's do btn dot dark for the moment and see what that looks like. So that looks fine. I don't know if it's black or not. Let me see. Inspect element, and btn dark is dot black. All right, so what I think I'm going to do is to go ahead and overwrite. So btn, do a class btn dash dark, and we'll do a background, come on, color that is black, and save. And so metafile the file, that will update the CSS for it. And if we refresh the page and do an inspect element, this should have all zeros, which it does. So that is good to go. All right, so we'll close out the dev console and come back over here and copy the text off of the, wait a minute. Oh, I do have text on this page. Okay, so let me come back to the page because I realize now my if condition is incorrect. So I don't need this else here, but I do need that page content because the page content, and actually in this particular scenario, the page content comes above this if condition because I want the form to be at the bottom of the page, not at the top. All right, now we have everything on the compact page correct. So we have our introductory set of information along with social media and email at the bottom, and just a basic form, message, comment, question. Now the submit handler is set up. It should not do anything. Well, yeah, okay, it should verify that this field is not blank. All right, so if you type that in there, it's still blowing red for the phone number, which it should because it's not in the expected format. All right, so if we do submit, so at least 12 characters, you are using 8. So let's see. All right. Okay, so it's still complaining that the format does not match, which is great. And this one is already being validated because if we come here, well, it should be being validated as an email address. If not, I need to, I'm not sure if I have an email form, so I can come back to my partial. Do I have a contact? I don't think I have a contact. I do have a request service page that has a form on that. So emailer, placeholder, we got emailer, min length is equal to 5 on the form that I use. and the placeholder text is there. I don't think I put a placeholder text in here. So user at we'll do nsbe-mp.org to place that, and we'll do equal John Doe. All right. So formats of each of those. And we'll change this here to I have a question about nsbe-mp. And so if I come back to the site, and so placeholder text is filled in behind here. And if you actually go ahead and click contact again, that will clear out the entire form. The placeholder text is there. If you try to submit it by default, obviously it's not going to do anything. But that is how that works. And then our submit function, which will be called by this particular URL, we'll send it over to our submit page, and then we need to have a page that the submit page, or the submit script rather, redirects to. So we're going to call that submission, and so name that submission.md. And looking at my existing code, I think the only thing I have in submission is that that page is not indexed. And so if we go back over to the docs folder in mine, I actually think I have it submit/index. No, that's not it. Okay, so here we go, submission. And so my submission has a redirect built into it, and that is it. So let's look at the raw text and literally just copy that and paste that in here. Title, submission successful, and it needs to redirect back to the root page. I also need a as you see in the submission page, I do not want Google to index this, nor do I want it to follow the links on this page. It could follow the link because this link actually just goes back to the home page, but I don't want it to follow the link and I don't want it to index it. So I've added this robots attribute in here, and in my base template file I have in the metadata, as soon as we can get back up to the top of the screen here, I have a robots attribute here that says that if the robots file, if the robots keyword is in the metadata of that particular page, then you follow what's in there. Otherwise, you can do an index and follow for whatever it is. So no concerns with this being indexed. It should not be. To further make sure that that doesn't happen, we can actually come down here to the robots.txt, and come to think of it, I actually need to move this. So we're going to cut that from right there and put that into the docs folder. There we go. So we have our robots.txt, and you can have a disallow attribute here and do /submission. It should be that. And then there's also /submission /index.html. All right. And so that way it ensures that no crawler will run across this file and put the submission page as a page on a Google search result or DuckDuckGo or Bing or whatever you use for your primary search engine. And then this submission page, this submission script rather, it should email out. And if you want this, you can just copy it out of the repository. The link is down in the description below where you can view this repository. You will need to define some variables here. I have help desk email in here, and I think I'm still going to leave it at that. And then that will be sourced in a configuration file. This path may need to change depending on what it has or where it's located on the server in production. I haven't logged into the production server in some time, so I will need to figure out where I can stick this outside of the web root so that this can be called as nsbe. So that is essentially how I do forms within a MKDocs website. So if I come back to the contact us page, so as you see, we have a full form here and ready to go. I know some people, they put the submit button as the submit, and then there's usually a link that goes to cancel or something of that nature. I usually don't do that. Usually I figure if somebody's going to go to a page and they don't really want to submit it, they'll find and go to wherever else they need to go. So they may click the contact page again, and that will clear that out for them, or they'll go up here and hit refresh, and which will also clear that out for them too. All right. that being said, we'll move on to the next item. And I think I have all of my pages covered. So my social medias are working and they are referenced on the contact page. Phone number is working for the chapter. We have our links that point to various aspects of things on NSBE. And what I want to do that I'm just now noticing is, like, I don't have the HTTPS on all of the URLs that reference some of the other sites. So I want to go ahead and put the HTTPS in there. Does it make a difference? Maybe, maybe not. But if the HTTPS does not work, that's not my fault. That means the URL on the other end is not using HTTPS, and while it may penalize my site, I'd rather redirect users to another HTTPS site instead of just the HTTP, due to the man in the middle of attacks that exist, as well as the Google, factoring in HTTPS for its own site and for its own purposes. So here we have all of these things corrected. Let's do format on this. Actually do a trim on this thing and then do format. All right, and so I notice it's weird how it's doing some of these paragraph tags on one line and some of them not on the other. So let's do format again. All right, so I like to see consistency in my work, and because I like to make sure that it is readable. A little bit of an OCD, if you ask me, in some regards, but I do believe that neatness is helpful and a little bit of spacing is useful. Like, as you see, I use one space between blocks of code. I know some people, they'll use 4 or 3 or 2 after that, but I just go with 1 because obviously everything else is bumped up next to each other. So I know that's one grouping. Same thing here with this particular card. I know this entire card is grouped together because I have a separator of white space, or blank line, if you will, in between the two. All right, so contact form is done with the page content showing. And just to verify that I haven't broken anything else, again, go through your site, checking, looking at the various pages, make sure everything is still the same. Images are not, sideways or anything of that nature. Buttons are still appropriately displayed, and links are still working. And that's not the link that I wanted to click. All right, program. So we come over here, look at some of the stuff here, have the scholarship and so forth. And so, yeah, so there's that. I may do another row of these blocks here that also highlight the scholarship program that we have, some other information maybe about the chapter, and maybe another block for membership. So matter of fact, I guess we can just go ahead and work on that now. And as soon as I can locate the text. All right, so here we have a container and a row. So what I'm gonna do is actually just go ahead and copy this entire row from here to here, copy, enter, paste. There we go. All right, and so for this one, we'll do join NSBE on this one. And I know in the other video, you probably may have remembered, if you have watched it. It's like, did we already do this? Yes. And I went back and changed them because I thought that it would be more appropriate to highlight the involvement of the kids in there, as well as some of the other things first, instead of what I originally had, which I think the first name was join. So we'll put this scholarship. And what's the other thing I can highlight? So I have join, scholarship, and let's see, programs, professional development. We got our NSBE Junior already highlighted about, and I guess we could do meetings as the other thing, because we do have meetings every month. So we'll do meetings here, and I'm actually going to take this and put the meetings up here before programs, and cut that programs off there and put it down here at the bottom and save. And so, yeah, all right. And so meetings, so, and I'm actually, okay, for the meetings, I really can display all of the information here for meetings, and it pretty much is that. Tuesdays, first of each month. All right, so if we come over here to, not that, so you got the first three, and then you got the, so I'm gonna do, like I mentioned earlier, have a closing tag, so end of first row, and then come down here to the bottom, well, end of headings is fine. So scholarship programs, meetings, so in the meetings block, we'll put that there, save, come back to the home page. And so we have meetings. Clean up this text. Meetings are held the first Tuesday each month at 6 p.m. Central Time. There we go. All right. And so now I'll come back at some point later and update these join. I can go ahead and do the links right now at least. So the join will go to the membership page. The scholarship will go to the scholarship page. And the programs will go to the programs page, which is good. And then the meetings will also go to the programs page as well. And so if we do meetings and scroll down, and I actually want to do a, so we do programs with a, I guess a jump to professional development. We'll save that. And so if we go here and then back to meetings, it should jump down to professional development, which it does. So that's good. All right. And so membership, that goes to membership. All right, cool. And scholarship goes there. And so a couple of things I want to get is a sign up mailing list sign up page. We'll actually have to get the information or a piece of the information from MailChimp because they provide I think a form builder in their site that you can use, and that form builder will spit out whatever it spits out. And then all you have to do is copy and paste that into the page itself, and it should be good to go. All right, so if I have some additional, I guess, call out actions here, I can add that here. But it looks a little bit better now that I have more items here, because originally I was just thinking that there was a few items here and it was not very much white space, to be honest. And I wanted a little bit more white space taken up, or more things that's taken up in the white section of the page. So it's good to have a little bit more content here on the homepage for that. So if we come back over here, so your jump down links work as well there, like it should. If we come over here, so this is one of the contact pages links that I was talking about. So we click that here and it goes to the contact page, and all of the contact information is here, mailing address, phone, and so forth. All right. So scrolling through, everything else still looks like it works like it should. This image here, I'm not sure why this image is still acting the way it's acting, but it is acting the way it's acting. And so not really much I can do about that at this time, but hopefully I'll get that addressed. So these buttons are turning gray when I mouse over. Not sure if I'm okay with that. Let's go back over and look at, so we have the secondary button class here on those. Is that right? Yeah. I got the secondary button class on here. I'm not sure if I want to keep that secondary button class or not. I guess it wouldn't hurt that that's there. The worst case scenario, again, I probably just have to take it back off and change it to something else. Maybe change it to black. So instead of secondary, we'll change this to BTN dark. And if we come back up here, which one did I change? So the join. All right, so that turns black, and it kind of coordinates with the buttons down here at the bottom. So I guess I'll go ahead and do that with the rest. So BTN dark, BTN dark, 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 and dark. There we go. All right, so when you mouse over now, they all turn black. Well, I forgot one. Oops. which is fairly easy to do sometimes. All right, so now that one turns black. All right, so we are good on each of those. And then it's good to see that each of these headings are lined up across, even though the items above are not necessarily the same height, that these second row of things are aligned because of the fact they are in a row. So I'm going to resize this just to show you the resizing of the items. So let's say you're on a phone and you're looking at this. This is what it will look like. So you have this navigation here, and that's not centered, but and that's really not centered. So that's something we have to address as well. Actually, none of these photos are centered. So I had to see how I can address that so that at least the center of the photo is there and it is being resized accordingly, because that is not resizing like how I would like it to, for it to be the carousel. But the individual heading or subsections down here on the home page, they look pretty decent to me, as well as the items in the footer. They are sorted how I would like them to be, with the copyright down at the bottom. So if we click the hamburger icon and just go to the other pages and see how they look, you want to check to make sure that when you're building a website that you resize it. Now you can use the dev tools. It's the dev tools that does have a mobile setup. So if you hit F12 and come over, I believe it's over here. There you go. So, and you can change it to the corresponding device that you want to use. But my personal preference is just to not do it that way. Instead, I rather take it out of mobile mode. And I rather just resize the entire screen over here. And then you're able to see it, how things will look in that resized position. And so far, everything is looking all right to me. And I got to learn that events goes to a different page, not here. All right, so this page is pretty straightforward. I actually will put a heading or header graphic there, just like this has a heading graphic, and to complete this section here of the executive board and all the scroll bars and everything else. But what you don't want to have is a website that has a horizontal scroll bar, meaning a scroll bar that goes left and right, because personally, I hate having to scroll left and right. Even when I write my code, I don't have it in a way. Now, because I have it zoomed in, it's going to have the scroll bar here when I pull up this left sidebar. But when I do that, it is resized and it doesn't have a horizontal scroll bar. And just to make sure my lines don't get too long, to prevent that, I have this character line set at roughly about, I believe, 80 characters or something like that nature. Or this says 100 and it says 111, so it's probably set at like 110 or something like that nature. And that way you get a decent amount of line, you know, all the way across, and it works, but not so far of a line that it just keeps going and going and going. Because I know some people, they like to write their lines as very long, and they end up having to scroll left and right, up and down. That's very difficult, in my opinion, to manage. It's easier if I can see, like, for instance, this could easily span this text area, could obviously run off the edge of the screen if I would have put another attribute in here. As you see, it's right at the edge. But I'd rather be able to see this entire thing on a single line, on a single screen, versus having it on a single line. But that is a preference that is usually determined by each developer. All right. Yeah, so let's see what page I am missing. I have a photos page. It'd be kind of ironic to not have a photo on the photos page. Maybe that's just me. So let's fix that right quick. So I have some existing photos in here. Let's copy. We'll go with this one. So we'll just copy it, and on the photos page, here we go. So using our metadata, image URL / images. I wish it would have copied that. It didn't. I believe this is it this one or this one? Well, actually, yeah. So let's copy that. All right. So that / JPG, an image alt. and so now if we come back to the photo page, yeah, there we go. And the alternate text, so we do view image info, you got the alternate text. It did not save that. Is it not there? That is weird. All right, view page source, if I can do that. Actually we're gonna do inspect element and use the inspector to, so the alt tag did not show up. I wonder why. Oh, because I mistyped alt in this. ATL versus alt, that's a big difference. All right, so now there we go. So we have our alt text, and if we do image info, whoops, image info, there we go, we have the associated text there. All right, F12 on that, so that's good. And I'm gonna have to come back and resize that image anyway, because when you do the full size of that image, it does blow up to mass proportion because it's in this original size. And so I need to scale it down so that when I run the speed test on this site, once it is deployed to its production environment, that I get a good speed test rating. A lot of times you will get a bad speed test rating, not because of the number of images on the page, but because the size of the images, like resolution size of the images, are way too high, like they're in their original format, and so you have to scale them down. Otherwise your speed scores, it's particularly for the mobile devices, speed score will be very low, or medium to very low. Desktops are usually more tolerant of that larger file size because they usually have higher connection speeds. So you usually 100 megabit or even gigabit internet versus a mobile phone that does not necessarily have that type of connection speed. So there's the difference in that regard.
That will wrap things up for this video. Join back tomorrow for the last part of the series where I discuss the automated deployment setup, as well as do a final review of the website after it has been deployed into production. Until next time, peace out.